علی کی یہ نواسی ہے نبی کی، زہرا کی طرح
ضرور پڑھیں گے
فاتحہ. ایک دفعہ سورہ فاتحہ اور 3 دفعہ سورہ اخلاص کی درخواست ہے. تمام ارواح مومنات خصوصاً شہدائے ملت جعفری اور آج کے جو بانی عالم ان کے مرحومین کے لیے. بسم اللہ. پر محمد والے محمد صلوات.
اللہم صلی علی محمد وعلی
سجاد جب دوبارہ اسیر جفا ہوئے، سجاد جب دوبارہ اسیر جفا ہوئے، زنجیر اور توق میں پھر مبتلا ہوئے، روح رسول پاک کو صدمے سے وا ہوئے، درد و علم بطول کو لا انتہا ہوئے، غل تھا کہ پھر مدینے کی بستی اجڑتی ہے، گردن میں توق پاؤں میں زنجیر پڑتی ہے، فارغ ہوئی دعا سے جو زینب بچشم تر، فضا کو تب بلا کے یہ بولی وہ نوحہ گر، یہاں سے بہت قریب ہے سنتی ہوں وہ شجر، پھولی نے جس درخت میں باندھا تھا شیخ کا سر، لے چل وہاں پا فاطمہ زہرا کی جائی کو، روؤں گی اس درخت کے نیچے میں بھائی کو، پوچھا یہ اس نے آ کے قریب سپاہ شر، عورت یہ کون سی ہے جو روتی ہے اس قدر، بولا کوئی شکی کہ تجھے کیا نہیں خبر، زینب یہی ہے عاشق سلطان بہلوبر،
علیہ السلام ہے. سننا تھا یہ کہ غیظ میں آیا وہ بد زباں، پہنچا قریب دخترے خاتون سو جاں، تھا آہنی جو ہاتھ میں ایک بیل چاکرا، مارا شکین فرق پا زینب کے ناگہاں، غش آ گیا زمین پا تھرا کے گر پڑی، سر پر لگی وہ ضرب کے تیورا کے گر پڑی. مولک مرض میں جب یہ قیامت ہوئی بابا، صدمے سے سرد ہو گئے زینب کے دست و پا. صحرا میں جنوں انس کے رونے کی تھی صدا، پہنچی جنا میں خواہر سلطان کربلا، آنے لگی بکا کی صدا آسمان سے، گل پڑ گیا کہ اٹھ گئی زینب جہان سے. آنے لگی بکا کی صدا آسمان سے، غل پڑ گیا کہ اٹھ گئی زینب جہان سے. سجاد جب دوبارہ
پر محمد والے محمد صلی اللہ
اللہم صلی علی محمد وعلی محمد.
پر محمد والے محمد صلوات.
اللہم صلی علی محمد.
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد.
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد. محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And your love salawat for ta'jeel faraj sahib al-asr In these months of Azar, as we commemorate the martyrdom of the Ahlul Bayt, there are questions that come about that require thought and investigation to be able to answer in a satisfactory fashion. Amongst those questions, there is one that our goal is to address tonight and to expand upon tomorrow night, which asks the question, why did the event of Karbala have to take place? When it comes to a question of why, any action that originates from Allah, to ask Allah why, the answer is because. Simply that Allah possesses a complete knowledge and understanding, and man has an incomplete knowledge and understanding. So anything that originates from complete knowledge and understanding has no need to be explained to someone who has less intellect to be able to comprehend the concept that's being presented. Which is why many times when it comes to fiqh and laws of Islam, we say that once we come back to the statement of Quran or Hadith, that so should end the question of why, because Quran and Hadith, when they're proven, there's no reason that the intellect provided in Quran and Hadith can be questioned, because it is a complete intellect and a complete thought. However, Allah has left the door of questioning open to find the wisdom of certain actions. And that when we ask the question why, it's not to pinpoint an ideology to say this is the only reason why, but rather to understand some of the wisdom behind the benefits that we can extract from that action. If I was to give you an example, a discussion takes place in contemporary society that Muslims do not eat pork. Ajallakumullah, pork is forbidden and it's one of the haram animals. When we want to ask the question why, we may find certain scientific benefits of avoiding this item. We may be able to identify certain physiological issues that come from someone who consumes this. But to say that this is the only reason why it is forbidden would to say and imply that the intellect of Allah can be encompassed in my mind and thought process. It's not possible. Which is why there are certain other wisdoms that are associated with the avoidance of pork than necessarily physical ones. The answer that Allah gives when He makes something forbidden incorporates even spiritual benefits. Which is why we have hadith from the Ahlul Bayt that teach us that one who consumes lahm al-khanzir or pork has an indecency and lack of haya associated with it, which is a spiritual impact of the consumption of this item. Meaning the concept of why our reaction would be to take a look at something physical, something biological, something that is material and can be traced. However, Allah's wisdom is not encompassed simply in the physical, also the spiritual, also the future, also the events and benefits of humanity. So hence asking the question, why did the event of Karbala have to take place? We can look for the wisdom in the event. We can look for the benefits that we have extracted from the event, but to say in its entirety and encompass the exact reason why is something we may never uncover, because Allah's intellect is complete and our intellect is incomplete. So the incomplete asking the complete for a definition cannot encompass every element of Allah's wisdom. A long-winded explanation is to say that this is going to be an incomplete answer. When we get to the idea of asking and answering this question, one of the places where we can start the conversation is the purpose and the necessity of creation, and start from there tracing out why such an event would have to take place. To understand and to take a look at from the initiation of creation, Allah establishes the fundamental, and He says, this is the 30th verse of Surah Al-Baqarah. In this verse, Allah points to the initiation of man on this earth. And he announces to the angels that I'm going to put my authority on this earth. This conversation, if you take a look at the 30th verse of the Holy Quran, does not end with Allah's statement. Rather, it continues that the Malaika asked, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. And Allah replies, إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. This verse gives us an entire explanation of a variety of different topics. First and foremost, Allah points to and He says that I'm going to place my authority on this earth. Why is it significant that the first human being that Allah places has to be His authority in the connection between God and man? To understand this, you have to realize the reality of the difference between Allah and humanity is such that humanity is a relative creation and can only understand things in a relative term of what exists in material, time, space, and matter. Something that exists outside of time, space, and matter, man does not have the ability to interact with or to know it exists, unless if that entity introduces itself to humanity. So Allah says, if I'm going to place my creation on this earth, I'm going to place my creation and connect with them so that they can get to know me. And if I didn't do that, they would not know me. Now, one of the questions that comes is that this starts the silsila of nabuwwat amongst humanity. That the anbiya and messengers of Allah are present on this earth. Allah has announced it. That as long as humanity exists on this earth, there will be connection between God and man. Because without this connection, man would have no way of knowing the desire, the will, or the presence and the reality of Allah. Because man does not naturally have the ability to encompass the absolute. One question that comes about is that why is it then that Allah did not just make all of us His Khalifa and speak to all of us? Why did He only choose one from the Anbiya to be the one that He communicates with? When we look at this, we understand that other creations of Allah already possess this ability. The angels, already all of them speak to and listen to the command of Allah and are completely aware of the presence of Allah. This creation existed. Why would Allah create another one with the same attribute? The reason for the creation of man was Allah to demonstrate the beauty and the power of His creation, ability to create. Allah creates a being that is unique and presents it in humanity. The example of humanity. This humanity has attributes which are unlike any of the other creations that are present. Which is why we have the hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, where he says, خَلَقَ اللَّهُ مَلَائِكَةٌ بِعَقْلٍ وَبِدُونِ الشَّهَوَاتِ. Allah created the angels with an intellect but without any desire. وَخَلَقَ الْحَيْوَانِ بِالشَّهَوَاتِ بِدُونِ الْعَقْلِ. And created animals with a desire but no intellect. وَخَلَقَ الْإِنسَانُ بِكِلَيْهِمَا. And Allah created man with both of these. The significance of that statement is that an angel possesses an intellect. When Allah commands an angel of something, an angel doesn't have a desire that says, I feel lazy, I feel tired, I feel sleepy. He simply hears the command of Allah and follows it. On the other hand, there's an animal. And an animal only operates on the basis of desire. Whatever it wants, it does. Whatever it needs, it does. Whatever is its current state, it satisfies it. It doesn't think beyond this element. And then Imam Ali says that Allah created man with both of these attributes, intellect and desire. And then Imam Ali continues that when man prefers his intellect, he becomes better than the angels. Why? Because he overcomes desire to submit to the command of Allah and prefers intellect over his desire. So this makes him better than an angel. But that same human being, if he prefers his desire over his intellect, he becomes worse than an animal. Because possessing intellect, he still ignored it and followed his desires. Allah, by creating humanity in this attribute of possessing both desire and possessing intellect, created what is appropriately called Ashraf al-Makhluqat, the best of Allah's creation. The significance of Allah only putting one Nabi amongst humanity was that if the Nabi interacts with the intellect of the human being, can the intellect submit to the presence of Allah in spite of its desires? And if it can accomplish this goal, it will be the best of all that Allah has created and better than even those who know Allah's command at all time and follow it in every instance, because of what it overcame in this process. Hence Allah says that this earth, I'm going to give its authority to man. You guys okay for an aside? All right, I know it's right. What's so special about the earth? You see, the mistake we make, it's not just the earth. It's all of material creation. Why? Because if the earth exists, for the earth to exist, first and foremost, we understand the moon has to exist. The moon makes a difference to the existence of the earth. The sun has to exist, and the authority again then extends over the sun, because that material is necessary for the earth to exist and persist. But all of space that's created is relative to each other. No one element of this universe that exists is independent of the other. To the extent where even when we take a look at the separation of elements from the Big Bang Theory, it indicates and says that the creation and the existence of the earth had to be in a particular range of distance from the center of the explosion of the Big Bang. Why? Because the densest materials from the Big Bang stayed closest to the center, and the lightest materials went the farthest away from the Big Bang. The Earth's existence exists within the exact right range to mix the elements between heavy and light, so that all of this experience is subject to the needs for the Earth to exist. So when we talk about that Allah is giving authority to man over the Earth, it's not just the Earth, it's the Earth and everything that exists with the Earth. Hence the angels now turn and question. So point one we covered, that Allah is indicating, I'm going to put a creation on this earth that has the connection between God and man. This connection will be unique to one element amongst the society to be able to guide humanity to use their intellect, and this will make them better than even the angels. Now Allah points to an argument that the angels present. أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. Are you going to place an authority over this earth that will spill blood and cause strife? Which brings about two questions now about this situation. How is it possible that the angels knew what man would do when Adam has just been created and hasn't been given authority of the earth? Which points to a second question, is that an angel has the ability to question Allah? Is that possible? Which points to the reality that we mentioned, that an angel possesses intellect. On the basis of its intellect, it submits to the command of Allah. Meaning it has an aspect of free will, but its free will is not tainted by emotion, that my desire competes with the desire of Allah. The angels asking the question of Allah is a sincere question based upon intellectual finding. When we say that it's a sincere question on the basis of intellectual finding, how did their intellect know anything about insan? This points to the reality that this earth was not created just for our forefather Adam, but that other Adam existed on this earth before us. And from amongst those Adam were things and beings that were similar to insan, to the extent where the discussion comes that they are referred to, one of them is referred to as Nas, as the Adam immediately before our Adam. When we today look at the geological history of the earth and we find fossils of different beings and different elements of different types of man that existed on this earth, it's not ba'id, it's not impossible to imagine that these are the other insan that were present on this earth, or other nas and types of being like man that were present on this earth before our Adam. So it's possible that those were the examples of the previous Adam that the Malaika had seen that looked similar to us, that even we say, they look like us. Maybe we are derived from them. But we know that we aren't derived from them. One, because why Allah is talking about the creation of Adam in heaven. And the other thing, Allah in the Quran himself says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. We created man in the best of forms. So insan, our forefather, was created perfect. He's not a derivative of another being, but rather he is his own individual being himself. So the angels seeing the previous creations ask a sincere question. We saw these previous creations, they were entirely submissive to their shahwat, to the extent where they killed, they caused strife. Now you're going to place one of them in charge of the rest of this creation? All of your qawm that you created, these will be the ones in charge of it? Allah replies, إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Certainly I know that which you do not know. Now this conversation continues on to demonstrate that Allah teaches Adam, and the verse continues into verse 31 where it discusses in 32, and about till verse 35 is an immediate discussion of the creation of Adam itself, and that the superiority of Adam that was established over the angels was on the basis of the knowledge that Allah gave to Adam. But that's not our discussion for tonight. Our question is, why did the events of Karbala take place? When we look and we see that Allah has given istikhlaf khalifatillah, that he has appointed and presented his authority on this earth, and the purpose of that authority is to be the connection between Allah and insan. We see that every single one of the prophets who had this position and responsibility, his goal was to present hidayah and to teach the religion and to connect humanity to Allah. And this was the goal of every prophet. Every prophet that executed this was preparing humanity to be able to have a complete understanding of who is Allah and how to follow and worship Allah. And that was the responsibility of our prophet, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Meaning, if we take that 123,999 prophets came before our prophet, all of these prophets, their goal was to introduce and lay the foundation for humanity to be able to accept and understand how to connect to Allah. And our prophet had the responsibility of perfecting that message and connection for humanity with Allah. That message of perfection, when we look at the example of our prophet, we find our prophet's behavior was very different than other prophets. One, our prophet was sent for all of humanity. And two, one of the elements that we take a look at and we see is that our prophet joined between two elements that was rarely done prior to him. That he joined between spiritual leadership and governmental leadership. Even the establishment of government that our prophet does is a miracle. And it's important to understand, we typically look at the spiritual element that our prophet introduced to humanity and society as being an amazing gift and miracle. But even the political establishment, the governmental establishment, the social development that our prophet did is a miracle within itself. To explain, Arabia was never governed by any government prior to the government of Islam. We know this. But do you know how unusual it is that even the prophet's government should be established in Arabia? Because to the left of Arabia, you have the Roman Empire that conquered so much of the world, but could not conquer Arabia. On the right of the Arabian Peninsula, you have the Persian Empire that conquered and ruled for over 1,000 years, but could not conquer Arabia. What these two massive empires over thousands of years could not do, our prophet accomplished in 10 simple years. Meaning, all of these people in all of their authority and power could never do this. And Allah established a government that never existed before in a land that could not be controlled, that any man that wanted to couldn't have done it had it not been done by the Prophet. Similarly, the example of Allah's hidayah and guidance at that point in time was establishing something that could not exist. Humanity did not believe it to be possible. The same way with the coming of our master of our time, Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. When the message of the Prophet is completed, that government will be established on the entirety of the earth, that no matter how humanity tries prior to that moment, they will never be able to do. And hence that will be another miracle of Islam that presents and teaches the entirety of this world what it means to follow the message and the guidance of Allah. When we look and we see the Prophet's responsibility of establishing both of these elements, of establishing both a spiritual responsibility and a social and governmental responsibility, we see that humanity's understanding of the message of Islam was that it exists in two elements simultaneously. An and ma, as they would say. That if I am to be the religious leader, then I must be a political leader. And if I am the political leader, then therefore I am also the religious leader. Which is why we see that at the death of the Prophet, he instituted both spiritual and political leadership in the personality of Ali ibn Abi Talib by announcing and saying, Man kuntu mawla, the entirety of the meaning of Mawla was established in the example of Amir al-Mu'mineen, such that both political and spiritual leadership was included in this individual. After that appointment is when Allah gives the message, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinukum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati. Meaning the significance is that 123,999 prophets prepared for the message of our Holy Prophet. Our Holy Prophet's message encompassed both spiritual leadership and political leadership, and the entirety of that authority needed to be carried down to the next person in charge. Now what happens when society steals the authority of Ali ibn Abi Talib? Their intention was to steal the political leadership because of their desire of having this government that never existed before, of having this power that didn't exist, that in 10 years came to the point that it attacked the nation or the government of Rome and created fear in Rome. That the Romans, that major empire, now feared these people of the Arabian Peninsula that they thought were so worthless, that they weren't even worth ruling, that we couldn't conquer them. There's no point in them. Now they've stepped up. when the Arabs step up to this process, the desire and the hunger in the Arabs was to take political authority. They could care less about religious authority. Which is why you take a look and you see that those who stole the authority of the Holy Prophet, they had no character in Islam. They had no personality in Islam. They had lived their lives as pagans and then accepted Islam. The reality of how they tried to balance that after the Holy Prophet is a lengthy conversation. But essentially, in their process of stealing the government, they also happened to take over religious authority. And they developed the ability to speak on issues of religion and to modify and change the religion, even though that wasn't their initial desire. But that was the consequence, which is why we see the second Khalifa introducing the tradition of Taraweeh. And the impact of his initiation of this tradition was so strong that even when Khilafat was brought to Imam Ali in the city of Kufa, he makes a statement. He says, I, in this role now, cannot remove the bid'ah that was established by the Khulafa prior to me. The people won't listen to me, and I can't remove these new developments. Each of the Khulafa that came, they took political authority and they made changes to the religion of Islam. Which is why when we talk about the Khalifa after Imam Ali, even he made changes to the religion of Islam. I'll give you an example. Eid Salat, the way we perform the prayers first, and there's the khutbah afterwards. Amongst the Ahl Sunnah, no, they do the khutbah first, and the prayers afterwards. This was an innovation that was initiated by the Khalifa after Imam Ali. And his significance for doing this, he announced himself. He says, listen, I have made the responsibility of the pulpit to curse Ali ibn Abi Talib. On the day of Eid, all of the Bedouins and all of the people gather in one place. But if the prayers come first, then they'll pray and leave without hearing the cursing of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So Muawiyah changes the process of Eid prayers to make sure that everyone has to listen to the khutbah before they can recite their Eid prayers. This was a change that was initiated in the religion of Islam, and the Khalifa possessed the ability that as part of his political power, he could make changes and adaptations to the religion of Islam. Until Muawiyah passes the Khilafat to his son, who is an open fasiq and fajr, meaning he openly sins and openly disobeys and is indecent. And Imam Hussein steps up and establishes the example, saying, Mithli la yubaya' mithlu. One like me cannot submit to one like him. That's one who follows the religion, is from the family of the Prophet, cannot submit to an authority like this man. The significance of the Imam's actions are with the interest of demonstrating and establishing the practice in society to teach humanity that this can be a king and a political leader, but he can't be a representative of the religion of Islam. Prior to Yazid, the Khalifa could change the religion. After Yazid, Khalifa no longer possesses the ability to make changes to the religion independently. His power in changing the religion is lost. The examples of this come when we take a look at the Banu Umayyah after the events of Karbala. They would keep fuqaha in their court to teach them the religion of Islam, which was a tradition kept by the Banu Abbas, the next dynasty that started. But the Khulafa, even in the time of Banu Abbas, did not possess the ability that they could rule on the issues of Islam independently. They needed to have a faqih, a judge, a jurist present in their court to indicate what does Islam want. The Khalifa could not make Islam on his own. How? Shall I give you an example? Everybody's okay? You have time? In the time of our 9th and 10th Imam, there happens to be a case where a man who is a non-Muslim abuses a Muslim woman and gets caught. And the court gets brought, the case becomes before the Khalifa of what do we do with this man who has now attacked and abused a Muslim woman. Khalifa says the punishment is death. I say, you're right, we'll execute the punishment of death until all of a sudden the Christian man stands up and he says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And they say, oh. Khalifa says, okay, that's very nice, go get killed. The fuqaha step up and say, you can't kill him. So what do you mean I can't kill him? They say, well, Allah has indicated that once you accept Islam, all of your previous sins are forgiven. This man, he committed the sin as a Christian. He's now a Muslim. We have to forgive him for all of his sins now. Khalifa says, how can you say that? We just caught him. He was just about to be punished. He said, yes, but that was when he was a Christian. He's a Muslim now. Can't do anything to him. Khalifa wants to punish the man, but he has no basis to punish the man anymore. So he says, find me a solution that makes sense, because this doesn't make sense. Otherwise, everyone would become an apostate, commit a sin, and then come back to Islam. So the wazir, the advisor of the king, says, ask the son of Zahra for what to do in this situation. That if there's a true message of Islam, you have to turn back to the Ahlul Bayt to find it. And they go to the Imam of the time, and the Imam says, kill him. And sends a message back, if this is the case, that the man did this, and then he accepted Islam, and now he needs to be punished, or should he be punished or not? The Imam says, no, give him punishment. Give him the full punishment as if he never said anything. The other jurists of the court argue and say, how can he make this statement? It goes against the fundamentals of what Allah has taught us about His religion. So the Khalifa is forced to turn back to the Imam and say, can you explain to us the reasoning of why you are saying the man still needs to be punished? The Imam brings a reply from the Quran. And he says, look in the Quran, that's when Fir'aun followed Musa into the sea. And at that moment, the punishment of Allah became apparent over him. Fir'aun in that moment said, I accept the religion of Harun and Musa. But that acceptance in that moment did not benefit him, because once you have seen the punishment of Allah, there is no going back to look for the mercy of Allah. So in this case, this man was caught. He was about to be punished. The same way Fir'aun in that moment about to receive the punishment is still cursed. The same way this man is still cursed and he still deserves the punishment. The same way Allah punished Fir'aun, so is this man punished. The significance of this tie between these two events shows us and tells us that the Khalifa's absolute will of representing the values of Islam was broken after the event of Karbala. One of the significant messages that happens through the event of Karbala is the separation of what we would today call church and state, to show that someone can take the governmental authority away from the Ahlul Bayt and the representative of Allah, but that taking of governmental authority does not entitle them anymore to make a change to the religion or implement a change to the religion of Islam. Why did this have to happen through the events of Karbala? From one aspect, we take a look and we see that anyone who took political authority and developed the position of religious authority by default, it had to be explained that simply political authority does not create religious authority. That was done by demonstrating the example of the atrocities committed in Karbala, that there was no sanctity and significance to the value given to any individual's life if they stood against the Khalifa, regardless of their position in Islam. Meaning that this can't be Islam. The further to that was the fact that this was the grandson of the Prophet who stood against the Khalifa, and there was no sanctity for the blood of the Prophet. Meaning that if I'm to represent the religion of Islam as the Khalifa, then how could it be that I destroy the fundamental that gave me my authority? Which is why we saw the examples in the court of Yazid, where the Roman emissary makes the statement. He says, I have a relationship with Dawood past many generations, and my Christian people honor and respect me and ask through my wasila for their du'as. And oh Khalifa, you killed the grandson of your prophet who gave you this seat that you sit on today? And you killed him with such atrocities? This demonstration of the position of who was Imam Hussein in relationship to the Holy Prophet was one of the fundamentals that was used to be able to show the people that the authority of the Khalifa did not extend over religion, because they violated the benefits of religion in this process. Another element that we take a look at is the process by which the continuation of the event of Karbala after the day of Ashura. After the day of Ashura, the message of Karbala persists and spreads into society. How? Because the natural reaction should be, if the Khalifa is the representative of Islam, then whoever is killed is the enemy of Islam. And this was the natural intended reaction that the Khalifa expected to happen after the event of Karbala. And this is why he was bold and daring enough to parade the prisoners through the various towns and villages to show and say that I, the Khalifa, and Islam has become victorious over these apostates and enemies. But Allah uses the event of Karbala to show society the separation between these two elements by two tools. One is miracle. Because remember, the goal of every prophet and authority of Allah on this earth is to give hidayah and guidance to humanity. One of the aspects of giving hidayah and guidance as the role of the Imam and of a Nabi is that they are always bringing people to the path of Islam. So why, when after the event of Karbala, these prisoners are paraded through villages, They witnessed a miracle to teach them where true Islam exists by witnessing the head of Imam Hussein reciting Quran from a spear. Had this event not taken place, there's two ways that people would have never realized. One, they would have said, if the Khalifa represents Islam and this is his enemy, then why is his enemy reciting Quran? Now, there must be something wrong with the Khalifa that this miracle, not only is it a miracle, but it's a recitation of Quran that's coming from the head of Imam Hussein. So meaning that the one that the Khalifa has killed, how could they be outside of Islam? That this is proving that this was not an enemy of Islam. Then the Khalifa wasn't fighting for the sake of Islam. This became one of the fundamental demonstrations that as society saw this, they had to come to and accept the reality that this can't be an enemy of Islam because this is someone reciting Quran as a miracle, not just as a normal person. If it was a normal person who was reciting Quran, you could make the argument to say that he is hiding and faking his intention. But when it's done as a miracle, there can be no falsification of intention. It has to be true intention that exists and puts the liability of falsehood on the Khalifa's head. The other element that became very important in this tool was the parading of the women through the towns who interacted with the second element of society. While the men were influenced and impacted by the recitation of the Quran from the head of Abu Abdullah, the women were impacted by the speeches and the interaction with the women prisoners. Had they not been present, it would not have been possible for all of society to be exposed to the message of the Ahlul Bayt. Which is why one of the realities that we see is as the women are paraded through the towns, the women of these villages want to give charity to the prisoners of war, which was a common practice, that a prisoner of war possesses nothing, not even food. If we give them food, we do an act of mercy that Allah loves. So the women of all these villages that are in towns that are passed come and present sadaqah and charity and food to the prisoners of war. In which case, the voice of Sayyidah Zainab steps up and says to every woman, return what has been given to you, we take nothing. The idea that a prisoner of war would refuse a gift was not possible. It had never been seen before. And it rose a logical question in the women. Why would you refuse a gift? Why would you, in your situation, have the ghira, the dignity to say that you don't need this? And the answer to that came very clearly, that it is haram in the religion of Islam for the Prophet's family to receive charity. Till today, those who are from the family of the Prophet, they are not entitled to receive wajib sadaqah, meaning mandatory charity that is prescribed through acts of kafara, responsibility that a person may have to pay out. This is why the entire system of Sahm al-Sadat in Khums was created, that there is a system of offering social network, social care to the family of the Prophet outside of the system of charity. And that demonstration in that moment gave an explanation to every village and every town that these people who have been imprisoned actually represent the truest values of Islam because they have an obligation to reflect the teachings of the Prophet more so than every other Muslim that exists. More so than even the Khalifa, because the Khalifa was not part of that sect either, of being from the family of the Prophet. So the question came in the society and time that why would the Khalifa have the authority to enact such punishment and abuse on the family of the Prophet? The conclusion that society was being brought to was to say that the Khalifa does not speak for the religion of Islam, and that rather we have to look at other sources to understand what Islam wants for us, not the Khalifa. This impact from the actions of Imam Hussein not only changed Madhab Ja'fari and our school of thought, but changed all of Islam. That if you look at all the other schools of thought, they will accept the first 4 or 5 khulafa and even allow the first 4 or 5 khulafa to make changes to the religion of Islam and say that we enact this teaching in our school of thought, not because the Prophet said so, but because the Khalifa said so. But after the incident of Karbala, no Khalifa has the authority to independently change the religion of Islam. Rather, we see that the other madhahib shifted to fuqaha and jurists who then came and taught them the fiqh of Islam, not the Khalifa deciding what is your obligation in the religion of Islam, not the Khalifa deciding what the message of Islam is. In this way, we see that the event of Karbala was designed to preserve the teachings of all of the Anbiya that came before, and to preserve the purity of the message of Islam from being further corrupted by the influences of the Khulafa and the influences of those who sought material authority, not spiritual authority. And they did not have the qualification for spiritual authority. Which is why, if you take a look and you see the history of all the Khulafa, in the process of appointment of all the Khulafa, there is no question or discussion, not from the first one until the last one, of their spiritual character and position. Their authority is simply either one taken by force, or it given to them by the predecessor, or given to them by a council, and not even on the basis of their religiosity, but on their basis of being acceptable to the individuals in power and authority at that time. So one of the answers that we come to the conclusion of, one of the wisdoms that we see, is that when we say that the religion of the Holy Prophet was protected and saved by the example of Imam Hussein, was to show and to separate that religion and state exist together when the personality in charge has spiritual authority, then their political authority is valid as well. But a person possessing political authority has no spiritual authority to make changes to the religion of Islam. This entire concept and teaching is one of the fundamental lessons that when we say Imam Hussein saved the religion of the Holy Prophet, it's not just to say that he gave us a message that we stay attached to and we weep over, but rather a message that makes sure that the spirit of Islam, that the Quran was not forgotten, that the Quran was not lost. Because the logical consequence of the actions of the Khalifa were that eventually, if the Khalifa represents the religion of Islam and he is in contradiction with the Quran, they would have followed the Khalifa, not followed the Quran. And as that Khalifa became someone who is an apostate, someone who is an enemy of Islam, and he drinks, they would say he drinks and he is Islam, and the Quran says don't drink. The Quran was for that time, the Khalifa is for this time. That entire system was destroyed by the example of Imam Hussein. But to destroy that example, the message did not end on the day of Ashura, but rather the masa'ib and the difficulties in the hidayah had to continue after Karbala. Which is why we continue to commemorate for this lengthy period of time, because of the masa'ib that were born and went through to ensure that this message reached us. They describe and say at one point in time, when these prisoners were being taken from Karbala, from Kufa to Sham, they say that at one moment we saw on a tall spear the head of Abu Abdullah fell. And whenever we would try to remount the head, it would not go. Eventually we went and we asked the son of this Imam, your father's head does not continue. Why does it not go forward? Imam replies and he says, with us was a small girl who has been lost and fallen off of the camel. Until she is returned, my father's head will not continue. They began to prepare to go look for this small child and daughter of Imam Hussein, when Sayyidah Zainab stepped forward and said that you who have abused our children will not go after this daughter of Hussein ibn Ali. She comes off of her mount and turns to Imam Zainul Abidin and says, "Oh Sajjad, the field is very vast. Sakina is very small. Where do I look for this child?" Imam Zainul Abidin says, "Oh aunt, look at the eyes of my father. In the direction my father looks, you will find Sakina." Have you ever imagined how difficult this moment was for Sayyidah Zainab? This is that lady who from her childhood was always in the company of Imam Hussein. They describe and say that Sayyidah Zainab from her infancy, should she begin to cry, the only way to stop her from crying was to put her in the hands of Imam Hussein. This lady's love for Abu Abdullah was such that when she wanted to leave the city of Medina, her husband Abdullah ibn Ja'far comes and he says, "Do you truly intend, O Hussein, to take these women through such difficulty?" Abu Abdullah replied and he says, "O Abdullah, Allah has intended for them to be seen as prisoners to preserve His religion." We say in a whispered voice, Sayyidah Zainab would say, "O husband, I have never been separated from my brother. Do not ask me to go without him, no matter the difficulty he goes through." I would ask in that moment, "O Abdullah, did you ever think to ask Sayyidah Zainab, you are going with Hussein today, But tomorrow, will you be able to look upon his head upon a spear? Will you be able to look in his eyes to find the direction of Sakina? They describe and say that Sayyidina Zainab turned into the field. She went looking in the direction that she saw the eyes of Imam Hussein looking. Eventually, she found a lady who sat in a corner, holding this small child in her lap. Sayyidina Zainab comes in front of this lady, being from a noble and honorable house. She says, "Oh lady, you have done us a kindness. We are from a very generous house. It is not our habit that someone shows us a kindness except that we are generous with them. But today Zainab has nothing to give you. But I tell you this, oh lady, if you give me your name, I will pray that my mother intercede on your behalf. It is the best that I can offer you in this condition." The lady replies and says, "Oh Zainab, I am with you in your Messiah. Your mother has never left your company. Be patient, O Zainab, and your mother Zahra is with you." I would imagine Sayyidina Zainab would ask, "Oh mother, where were you when they burned our tents? Where were you when our children were cut in half and run over by horses? Where were you when they trampled the very body of Abu Abdullah?" لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا لقضائه وتسليما لأمره ندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم. We call out 10 times Ya Allah, 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 Ya Mahmud بحق محمد، يا أعلى بحق علي، يا فاطر السماوات بحق فاطمة، يا محسن بحق الحسن، يا قديم الأحسان بحق الحسين. Oh Allah, forgive our sins and cover our flaws. Ya Allah, give the thawab of this majlis to our marhumin, the marhumin of tonight's sponsors, and all those who are in need of dua. Ya Allah, by the right of the tears in our eyes, we have gathered here with hajat, fulfill our hajat. Those amongst their families, our community, the mu'mineen who are suffering through sickness and disease, Ya Allah, give shafa'at to the mu'mineen wherever they are. Ya Allah, those who are suffering through strife and difficulty and insecurity, give aman to the mu'mineen, muslimeen wherever they are. Oh Allah, keep our children on the upright path of Islam. Hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Make us and our families from the upright supporters of Sahib al-Zaman. Entitle us to the ziyarat of Imam Hussein in this world, the shafa of Imam Hussein in the hereafter. رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد.
हाय खाक है सर में ज़ैनब है सफर में हाय खाक है सर में ज़ैनब है सफर में कब होगी रेहा कैद से कब होगी रेहा कैद से कब जाएगी घर में ज़ैनब है सफर में हाय खाक है सर में ज़ैनब है सफर में हाय खाक है सर में ज़ैनब हाय खाक है सर में ज़ैनब है सफर में हाय खाक है सर में ज़ैनब है सफर में बिखरे हुए बालों से मुँह ढाँप लो बीबी बिखरे हुए تیری راہ گزر میں زینب ہے سفر میں اے خاک ہے سر میں زینب ہے سفر میں تن پہ پھٹے کپڑے اور کان بھی زخمی تھے تن پہ پھٹے کپڑے اور کان بھی زخمی عابد نے اتارا جو عابد نے اتارا جو سکینہ کو لحد میں زینب ہے سفر میں خاک ہے سر میں زینب ہے سفر میں ایک وقت تھا آزادی کی ہے کوفے کی زینب ایک وقت تھا شہزادی تھی ہے کوفے کی زینب کس حال میں آئی ہے کس حال میں آئی ہے بابا کے شہر میں زینب ہے سفر میں خاک ہے سر میں زینب ہے سفر میں تاریخ تیری جنگ کو دہراتی رہے گی تاریخ تیری جنگ کو دہراتی رہے گی اصغر جو لڑی تو نے اصغر جو لڑی تو نے ننھی سی عمر میں زینب ہے سفر میں ہر خاک ہے سر میں زینب ہے سفر میں کب ہوگی رہا قید سے کب ہوگی رہا قید سے کب جائے گی گھر میں ہائے ہائے زینب ہائے ہائے شام 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 رسول اللہ السلام علیکم نبی اللہ السلام علیکم امیر المومنین سید الوسیم السلام علیکم فاطمہ الزہرا سیدۃ النساء السلام علیکم خدیجہ الکبریٰ ام المؤمنین السلام علیکم حسن المصطفیٰ السلام علیکم ابا عبداللہ والارواح التي حلت بثنائك ورسلت عليك عليكم مني سلام الله ابدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعل الله آخر الأجر مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى الحسين سيدي مولاي أبو الفضل العباس قاسم الحسن مسلم الأخير روحاني من هو وحبيب من المذاهب وهدي شهيد رياي السلام عليكم أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين محمد بن أبي جعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى محمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي السلام عليكم صاحب الأسر والزمان إمام الأسر والجان جل الله تعالى فرجك الله تعالى مخرجك ظهورك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته
اللهم صل على اللهم كل وليك حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توبا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. اے رب جان پنجتن پاک کا صدقہ اس قوم کا دامن غم شبیر سے بھر دے. بچوں کو عطا کر علی اصغر کا تبسم بوڑھوں کو حبیب ابن مظاہر کی نظر دے، کم سن کو ملائے ولولائے اون محمد، ہر ایک جوان کو علی اکبر کا جگر دے، ماں کو سکا ثانی زہرا کا سلیقہ، بہنوں کو سکینہ کی دعاؤں کا اثر دے، مولا تجھے زینب کی اسیری کی قسم ہے، بے جرم اسیروں کو رہائی کی خبر دے، جو چادر زینب کے زار مولا محفوظ رہیں سے خواتین کے پردے، جو دین کے کام آئے وہ اولاد عطا کر، جو مجلس شبیر کی خاطر ہو کر دے، مفلس پر لال و جوار کی بارش، مخروز کا ہر قرض صدا غیب سے کر دے، غم کوئی نہ دے ہم کو سوائے غم شبیر، غم کوئی نہ دے ہم کو سوائے غم شبیر، شبیر کا غم بانٹ رہا ہے تو ادھر دے، نعرے دشمنان شبیر تیرے پیر پہ لانا